Hello, you're listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better, and each episode I'll be talking to my guests about their epiphanies, their inspirations, and the magic of their workflow. I'm here this week with Charlie Beech. Hello, Charlie. Hello. Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. So Charlie Beech of Front Row Support. So I'm the founder of basically an outsourced business development business. Been running this for a couple of months now. Before that, I had a job, and before that was 15 years in professional rugby. So been an interesting life to this point.
And I mean, we talked a bit about this before. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on is that the way that you've brought, what you learned when you were a rugby player into business. How do you see that through line for you?
It's been a really interesting one because you leave rugby not that you know anything. Like, it's a terrifying step. Well, it'll be the same for any sports person. It's a terrifying step when you realise you've got to go make your way in the real world. So you don't think you've got any qualifications, any skills, nothing that you can lend from one to the other. So it's quite a bumpy ride, to be honest. I landed in business coaching, which made sense in kind of a coaching front, because coaching is coaching. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the back end of things. It's a delivery system. It's not the thing itself. So that made sense in a way. Though I wasn't a coach, I was sort of the business development end, which is what I'm still doing now. But it's taken me the best part of a year, I think, to realise sort of just how much that rugby and sport prepared me for a life in the working world. And the two aren't as different as we thought they were, because it's that same dedication, that same commitment, that same sort of willingness to run through brick walls and do something over and over again and get it right and look back at what you've done and improve and get better, and all those things that got me forward in rugby and in sport are also really useful in this as well. So yeah, it's been hard, and I know a lot of people find it hard. And I know it's a sort of a big, almost call it a pandemic, ironic at the minute, but what COVID's done to the professional sporting world, I think there's going to be a lot of people going through this journey where they're trying to work out one to the other, thinking they've got less than they actually have. And I think they're all, with a bit of help, could do some real good things in the world. So yeah, been a very interesting one.
Lovely. So let's crack on then with the questions. So Do Yourself a Favour is about things that we've learned through experience, things that change the way we think about things, and things that make our lives easier. That's why we're here. So would you talk a little bit about something you wish you'd known earlier, something you wish you'd learned earlier?
Just how much fun it is working for yourself.
Okay.
I think I spent a year sort of terrified of it. I'll be honest, I took the plunge nearly 4 months ago now, and I've loved every second of it. So I did well to learn what I did in the place. I learned it. I think I took a lot from that year. However, there came a point where I should have gone and I didn't, and I hung around for a bit. And yeah, if I'd known that sooner, I'd have gone then.
Okay. So you do you feel like that was still a necessary step between professional rugby and doing what you're doing now? Do you think you could have gone straight into working for yourself after rugby, or did you need a bit of a salary job to cover it?
I think I personally needed a bit, because I worked a couple of jobs while I was playing rugby to try and boost things up. You need to know, you need to learn. Like, I'm not arrogant enough to suggest I could have just stepped straight out of one and dived into the other. Some people do, but some people have backings in that kind of world anyway. They've got people around them who can do it. For me, sort of by myself, as I was at the time, I needed a level of support. And I think the first sort of 6 months of that year were really good for me in terms of learning about myself and learning the business world, and sort of being within coaching. Obviously meet a lot of people, and it's been very good for me. But there came a point where that went sour. And I think that's the point where I don't think I learned anything new from that point, other than how not to do things and how not to treat people. So I just think at that point I could have turned and gone by myself, but that kind of fear of, I don't know enough, I'm not ready, sort of held me back. And then when it was forced upon me, I stood up and sort of went out and did what I did. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was a good stepping stone for me. Waited there a little bit too long.
Okay. And on that transition from when you finished rugby into the full-time, salaryman kind of role, What did you take from that? Was there anything that was like a shock, or you needed to work through in order to feel like you were able to give it everything you got? How different was it for you?
It's a weird one because in a lot of ways, I wrote a brief article on it when I first started out, because there are some things that are so similar. It's unreal. Like, weirdly enough, rugby players, sports people, quite good with contracts, because we're used to working contractually. We used to have a sort of a couple of years signed up here. That's that sort of thing there. So in terms of turning up, doing as you're supposed to do, handling the paperwork, doing all that, a lot of it made sense. And bank holidays continue to throw me because they exist and they're a thing. I don't know. Like, I was the guy playing on Boxing Day, so other people had sport to watch. So little things like that are weird. The biggest part's the mentality, though. Like, you come from an environment where everyone's there to be the very best they can be because they want to be the one on the pitch on the weekend, to be in an environment where people are quite happy doing what they do and just sort of getting through, and I'm earning enough, I'm doing enough, I'm happy with life, I'm happy to go and buy it. It's a different mentality. That was sort of coming to terms with that almost, where I'm constantly trying to push and push and push and realising that's not, as an employee, not really your role. Your role as an employee is to do, which seems common sense, but at the time it wasn't really how I'd been wired. Yeah, it took a little while to adjust to that, to be honest.
And now you're a business owner. How are you finding that same drive and push is benefiting you? How are you taking that forward?
Yeah, I'd say it is, and I think that's where for someone who is built to push and drive, I think being a business owner is the natural step, because I suppose you could argue sort of sales teams, because they constantly push out, they're given sales targets and given something to run at. You could argue that they, having sort of wanting to push the boundaries, would work, but then you have to do things down a certain process, which again is some wanting to push the boundary, like in terms of take control of something themselves, own it, and take it the direction it goes. I think owning your own business is more or less the only way you can do that and still sort of stay true to yourself. So I'm finding it really beneficial. Don't get me wrong, I need plenty of people around me to formalise it, tell me if it's a good idea or not, write down how I've done it, sort of, make sure it all lines up properly and I'm not doing anything silly. But so I'm not saying it's the perfect way of doing things, but I find this to be far more fulfilling than having a job was.
How would you describe I'm just interested by something you were just saying then about, the bank holidays and about the difference of professional sport versus employment. What's work-life balance like as a professional sports? Is there such a thing?
Yes and no. It's a really odd one, because, and this is where I've had sort of conversations over the years. In terms of the hours you work, you don't work as many as you would an office job. So, like, formally being at your training ground training, there's a couple of long days in the week. Without getting really in depth, if you play on a Saturday, you'll have Sunday off. Monday's a very light day. You're in, but it's very light because you're still recovering. Tuesday's a full day. Wednesday's off entirely. Thursday's usually a slightly shorter day. Friday, you're in for an hour. So in terms of the hours you're at home as opposed to at work, you've probably got a better work-life balance in terms of just pure timings. In terms of mentally, you never really put it down, because like, you having a day off to go to a wedding is a day that your competition is in training, which is a day that they jump ahead of you in a pecking order. You have a curry on a Friday night. That's an extra bit of fat you need to run off to keep yourself in shape. You don't do a run of the morning. That's a bit of fitness that you're missing that somebody else might put on. Every single day you're weighed in. Every single day you're measured. Every single sort of moment. That sort of 6-month appraisal assessment you might get in a business, like, you're getting that every week as to whether you're the person that's picked or not for the team. And it's a snowball effect as well. If you're the guy who's starting and you're doing well, you're going to start the following week. So it doesn't matter how good you are, the person that's on the bench or not even in the squad, if you're not in the shop window as such, you're never getting picked up again. So there's a real fear of falling behind, because once you're not playing, the excuses are then used in terms of, well, you're not match ready, or you haven't had any, you're not a decent role. It's very, very hard to smash back through into that team. So you never want to be the guy to miss a step. You never want to show a sign of weakness, which having a day off ill, having an hour off to go pick the kids up early, or going to watch a school play or having a wedding, or even, don't get me wrong, they're very understanding around funerals and weddings and things. They do tend to let you off for those, but not too many, So it's physically, work-life balance is pretty good. You're at home quite a lot. You're around. Mentally, I think it's, only in the way of a bit, again, with the business owner who carries the stresses and the worries home every single night and sits there worrying about them to small out and straight back on it. I think that's the only transfer almost, people who understand that kind of mentality is someone who's fully employed. You do your job, you go home, you think about it a bit, you switch off because you've done your job, you've done it well, it'll be there tomorrow. Whereas, like a business, and like I say, when you're trying to keep on something, every second you're not working on it's a second somebody else could be stealing the yard on you. So.
And it took me a minute when you were talking there, when you said, like, if you're a wedding for the day and that's a day that the competition's training, you're not talking about like the opposing team. You're talking about the other people in your team.
Yeah, that's your teammates. I mean, this is again, it's an odd situation where it almost seems counterintuitive to some people, but it's something that I think when you look around the people who I think are doing business right, I think they understand. I would and have worked very successfully with people who are in my position, who are actively gunning for the same position as me.
Okay.
The better I make them, the better they make me. Because as we all know, if you play your kid at whatever it is you're playing at when they're 5, it's very easy to beat them. Your skills aren't pushed that hard. You're not really training yourself. You're not getting better. You're just winning a game. It's like, whereas if you're playing against your brother, who has always pushed you really hard, you're going to play the best of whatever that game is you've ever done. It's the same with business. It's the same with anything. Like if you're against people who are good, they're going to get the best out of you. And for me, like I'm a very competitive person by nature, and it's like I want to win, knowing that there were no excuses for why the other person didn't win. So, I was having a bad day, or you knew this, or you didn't take that, or I didn't know those were the rules. Or, you heard this was happening. Nah, give them every tool I've got. I tell them every secret I've got. I tell them everything on it, and all I do is outwork them anyway, outplay them anyway. Because then, when I know they're at 100%, if I then go win, we can both look each other in the eyes, and I'm like, right.
Yeah.
So I will help anyone. Sit here talking to people in business development, I help people around anything. I'm like, I'll give anyone a step up that are needing things, because at the end of the day, I want to win knowing I've done everything, not that I've tripped someone up to get over the line. I want to know that I've won because I'm the best one out there. So that drives in me, that sort of pushes in me. But yeah, when you talk to other people about helping out people who are, your active competition, it can seem quite strange for some people, because that doesn't normally happen in life. Like if you're in a sales department all going for the sort of bonus for the top 7 that month, giving the other guys some hints and tips on how to sell is probably not seen as the normal way of doing things.
Also, having never ever beaten my 7-year-old at Uno, I can't identify with much of what you've just said.
My kids were the same. He played some outrageous Jenga moves that no adult, there were blocks sticking out all sorts of angles. It was
the tiny fingers, like they're made for it, like just like tiny fingers and Jenga. Yeah, it's terrifying. So, what would you say was, and we've talked about this. This question started off as being about books, but actually across the course of asking it to a lot of people, it's been books, it's been conversations, it's been concepts, it's been a bit broader than that. But what was something that really changed the way that you thought about things, or changed the direction that you pushed things in? Was there a epiphany moment for you that did that?
I think one of the biggest things for me, and it's less in. There are some, like you say, there's some brilliant books out there, and depending on where you are in life and what you need to know, the right book at the right time is amazing. And I think a lot of it lands with people. It's more the situation you're in as a person when you hear something. I think that's the real relevance to it. So when you're looking for great answers on sales, there's some brilliant stuffs out there, or you're trying to find this. The thing that's always got me is mentality, because it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. Your mentality is what carries you through. Like it's the number one across the board, no matter what's going on. If your mind's right, everything else works. You look at what you do. The whole thing is about making the whole thing work better so that it works, so that you can, in your own mind, chill out a bit and actually really get on with what it is you want to be doing, rather than getting caught up in a house and clicking through these millions of emails that you've managed to let junk up in your inbox, all these sorts of things. I was in a webinar, and not one of the most inspiring speakers I've ever heard, but someone that knew his stuff, but just didn't really relay it across as well as others have done. So I wouldn't, sit there and, it was an internal one as well, so it's not someone who sort of recorded thing or anything else. But like I say, it's a bumpy road coming out of professional sport. And you do sometimes wonder if you've done the right thing. You wonder where you are in life. You've gone from being a peak performer to being someone who's on the bottom rung of the ladder somewhere else. It's quite hard to manage, and you worry about all sorts of things, stuff going on in personal life. And it was a diagram he'd taken from sort of Eastern philosophies, and it was of a tree, and it was talking about extrinsic motivators being like the sunlight hitting the leaves, adds energy, tree grows. But it's about having the strong internal motivators, i.e. like your roots are sunk deep, to look after. Because when the summer months go and the leaves fall down and there's no sunshine hitting the leaves, you've got to be able to look after yourself. You've got to be that strong tree in the winter. And I was sitting there thinking, that's great. And, it was a lovely diagram, really good thing. And he just said, look, at the end of the day, no one controls your mindset but you. And it just hit me, because it is. You allow whatever else happens in life, anything that happens to you, your perception of that event affects how you react to it, and how long you carry that pain or that reaction for, and how you let that affect your choices from that point onwards. All of it, it's all down to you. There's no hard and fast rules. There's nothing that makes you, they said this, therefore you have to do that, or they were mean to you, therefore you've got to be angry for the rest of the day. Or that nice thing happened, and therefore you can sort of give up for 3 weeks. Like there's nothing. You doing the same thing to 10 people, get 10 different reactions, and they've all chosen to act the way they have afterwards. It's like that really set me loose on a lot of levels, because it's like no one does control what I do but me. No one controls my mindset but me. So if I choose to have a positive mindset, if I choose to drive forward and help people, if I choose to succeed, I won't say I'll be on it 100% of the time. Like we're human, we can't all, just, I'm going to be amazing and never have a bad thought in my life. That's not what it means. It's just that as things hit you, you sit and look at it and you go, right, what am I going to do with this? Yeah. I can allow it to stick me into a tailspin and, pick up a bottle of whiskey on the way home and feel bad about life in general for a couple of days. Or I can pick myself back up and go, right, how am I going to use this? It really hit me. I don't know, it was a simple line at a time. I think I was sat there looking for it, but it really did stick.
It's that difference between reacting and responding, isn't it? It's giving yourself that moment for like your grown-up brain to kick in. Just put the chimp to one side for a little bit, and like let yourself actually respond in a measured way rather than reacting. And it's easier said than done, but you can choose. You can't do anything about those external factors, but you can choose how you respond to them. If you're able to stop yourself or pause yourself from reacting to them in the way that your chimp brains.
Yeah, it's one of the big lessons I brought across, and it's the one thing I rolled down to. And there's 100 different forms of it expressed in different ways. But control the controllables.
Yeah.
And it's control what you can. I think it's even like a prayer. I was watching a film recently. Had like an AA meeting at the beginning. They recite it as a prayer, which is something like the strength to change the things I can change, and the courage to let go of the things that I can't, and the wisdom to know which is which. It's something along those lines.
Serenity prayer, yeah, the serenity prayer.
There you go. Like, I can only control very few things in this world. So getting all het up and bent out of shape about the things I can't control doesn't do anyone any good whatsoever, especially not me. So it's like, look, what can I do here? As you say, like, you'll react, and you can't help your reactions. They're built into you, and that's how that goes. And, there's times where you react and then realise afterwards you shouldn't have done, and it's learning from those and apologising for whatever's gone on in the meantime. But those bits where you can stop it in its tracks and go, no, hang on a second, you don't need to do it this way, and move on a better sort of form, that's fine. In all things, like, if I can do something about it, I will. If I, and that's the whole point of it. If it's something that was within my realm of control, I'll do it. If it's the stuff outside of that, the longer I hold on to it, the more it weighs me down. It's as simple as that. And it's just recognising, is this something I can directly control? No. Can I influence it? Because sometimes your actions will influence something indirectly. You talk about like the referee. Like I can't control the referee's decisions, and yet if I'm screaming in his ear, he's likely to get very annoyed with me and start putting decisions against me that otherwise might have gone the other way.
Mhm.
We're all human, and 50-50s go one way or the other. And if I know one team's been great to me, and the other team's been paying me out all game, I'm probably likely to go against the team that pay me out. So it's like I can influence it, but I can't control it. So my actions do have an external influence on others, sort of thing. But really, can only control me, can only control what I do. So I look after that, manage the influence it has on others, and let go of everything else. And on the days I keep on top of that, they're really good days. The days I start bogged down and worried about the other bits, those are the bad ones. So realizing that that's within your control. It's one of the few things that's always within your control. No one can change what's in your head but you.
Thanks, Charlie. So we're getting now into a little bit about insight into your workflow and things that make your lives easier. It's like your life easier. So what's a tool or a thing that you use every day that's not your phone or your laptop?
Headset, little earpiece headsets. Yeah, really useful. Just because it leaves your hands free. Well, this is a really simple thing to say, but when you're chatting on a phone all day and you've got jobs to do, if you can be typing at the same time, doing because a lot of what I do involves being on a phone. So when you're talking to people, when you're taking notes, to actually have your hands free to do that's great. Rather than one holding it against your head and trying to do it in one hand, it just slows you down. And the fact they switch into music in between calls is quite nice as well. So I should be entertained along the way. So yeah, and I think, to be honest, other than a laptop and a phone, it's pretty much the only other thing I use.
Do you have a preferred or recommended headset that you would go to, or you quite agnostic?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, brands have never been my thing. If it works, it works. And I'm quite happy with it. I couldn't care less what it looks like. I think I found these on Amazon about a year ago. MPAL, they're called. It's just a little plug-in earpiece. You barely even notice you've got it in. Other people can't really see it. Just a little thing in your ear, but you click it to answer phone calls, and you click it again, it switches back to music, and it hooks up to your phone, and it's genuinely brilliant. Like 30 quid's worth of equipment. They're probably even cheaper now. They've probably released 10 updates. It's a brilliant thing. Really clever.
The thing that I found really helpful about having a headset when you work from in kind of like our current situation is that especially during the pandemic with kids around, often the room in which I would answer the phone would not be the room in which I would want to be to have the conversation. So being able to move somewhere else is super helpful. But the other thing is, so things like checking your calendar. Okay, my calendar's on my phone, as is on all the other devices. Until I got a headset, actually checking my calendar whilst somebody that was on the phone was like this. I probably a third of the time I'd hang up on them. It would be a proper sort of like juggling act to make sure that everything was going right. Whereas actually, when your hands are free and you're not trying to talk to them, and also inevitably you put them on speaker, someone's going to scream at you in the background or something. So it does make a massive difference, especially I think the more we rely on our phones and our equipment to be pretty much everything and not just single use devices. So what was the last really shiny thing that you bought or acquired that you were kind of like, I'm really glad
the last really, see, like I say, for my work, I don't need a lot. So I just sort of plow on. And one thing I've always done in life a little bit too much is just plowed on with what I need to do and forgotten that it's actually quite fun to have fun along the way as well. So the last literally shiny thing I picked up was an axe. I started doing axe throwing, which is absolutely glorious. So that was a couple months back. Started doing it, and then I got one for Christmas. So I got a little tomahawk sat somewhere, which is quite fun.
So talk me through. You started doing axe throwing. What's the story there?
It was a networking meeting back in the bit of COVID where they let us out. It was last summer. So it was a sort of social meeting because obviously the world's left us where it's left us. And I firmly believe as we move more online in work, and I do think it's here to stay, we need to make sure we're having those social meetings in person. Someone had a mate who has an axe throwing range. So we went up and threw axes, and I absolutely loved it. It was as simple as that, really. Like I just,
fabulous.
When you're a thumping great sort of 20-stone bloke, there's very few things in life, that fit you. Like always don't tend to fit. You stand and you stand in a lift and the manufacturer tells you that 8 people weigh 640 kilos. And I'm like, well, I take up 140 of that by myself. So it's not really built for you, this world. So when someone gives you a thumping great two-hander axe and goes, throw it into that giant thing over there, it just makes you feel nice and warm inside, you know?
Yeah, okay. I have to say, I didn't realise that. Like, I knew that I knew axe throwing was a thing, and I didn't realise it was a bit like, I don't know, fishing or like those kind of sports where there was kit that you could buy and have at home.
Oh yeah, no,
Wow,
I mean
okay.
most of the targets are just tree stumps someone stuck up on a wall somewhere and painted up. You don't need a lot, you know, and just axes. I mean, people have sort of knives and things they throw as well, but yeah, seeing, you know, one-handed or big double-handed throwing axes. I mean, it's the same as normal axes, really. I mean, I suppose there's proper competition ones that are weighted, right? But I mean, it's all fun, isn't it? Like,
that was gonna be my next question. What is the difference between a throwing axe and just an axe?
yeah, well, the one I've got's got like a carbon fibre handle, and it's got a sort of bit sticking out, a spike on the back end as well, so it can hit it top end or back end.
Okay.
Which is obviously makes things a bit easier. But in terms of the rest of it, I mean, I have had fun throwing an actual hatchet as well. So I mean, it's just, I suppose someone technical could give you a technical answer. For me, I'm just a giant kid in a toy shop, just going, "Ooh, throw it at a wall."
Lovely. That's one of the most terrifying things I've ever heard. Great stuff. Thank you, Charlie. So, last question then. I'd like you to finish the sentence. Do yourself a favour and...
I genuinely, I could say, like, the whole point of that conversation in terms of the axe throwing and other things I'm picking up at the minute, like, life's bloody serious. There's a lot going on. We all, I think, at times put our heads down and think, if I just work really, really, really hard, I'll get where I want to go. I think sometimes it's about sort of being present, realizing that your life's happening around you, and if you spend too much time of it focusing on the boring stuff, you'll miss out on all the good stuff along. So yeah, work hard, but play just as hard on the other side. Like, go do something that puts a smile on your face. If it's as daft as axe throwing or as lovely as sitting down with your kid and playing Uno, like, do something every day that puts a smile on your face.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn's the best place at the minute. Website's still in development, but if you go on LinkedIn and chat me on there, you'll find me eventually. So just Charlie Beech, your front row support work.
Lovely. And that's Beech like the tree, not like the sand.
Beech like the tree, it's a handy place. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for coming and do yourself a favour. And thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time. You've been listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. Brought to you by Make Work Work Better. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better. Our theme tune is by The Titanics. Talk to you again soon.